Howdy folks, I'm a whimsical white-throated sparrow, wondrously weaving between waving wildflowers.
I'm Amber.
And I guess here are some more wildflowers, although there's nothing but snow outside for us to weave between.
Maybe the sparrow's on vacation in Florida.
Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's just hallucinating. Let's get started. Alright folks, and our first letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Letting My Husband Dump My Sister-in-Law and Niece onto My Mother-in-Law and Father-in-Law after my family's food had been tampered with? And this one does involve bodily fluids, just to warn you about that. I'm a 37-year-old female, and I had taken in my sister-in-law, a 41-year-old female, Michelle, after her husband had kicked her out of the house due to him serving her with divorce papers. And my niece, Annie, 15-year-old female, went with her mom. Michelle had called my husband Josh, a 39-year-old male, shortly after it happened, and we both agreed to let Michelle and Annie stay at our house until Michelle got an apartment. Well, that was 2 months ago, and everything seemed to be going well. Both Michelle and Annie were helping out around the house despite me telling them that they didn't have to, and I didn't think that there would be any problems with them living with us. That was until yesterday, when we decided to reward my daughter Claire, a 13-year-old female, for doing well on her mid-unit test with pizza and her favorite Blizzard. When Claire went to get her ice cream out of the freezer after eating her pizza, Annie saw it, since she was in the living room, and asked Claire if she could have half of it since she wanted something sweet. Claire refused because it was her treat, and Annie got mad and started to argue with my daughter. I overheard them arguing from the bedroom, and I went downstairs to see what was happening. Well, Claire explained what was happening and asked Annie if it was true, which she confirmed that it was. So I explained to Annie that the ice cream was Claire's reward for doing well, and that it wasn't fair to make her give up half of it. Annie just said, okay, and I figured that was that. I decided to make spaghetti for dinner last night, since we had all the ingredients, and once it was done, I went upstairs and asked my husband if he wanted to have his food now or later. When I went back into the kitchen, I saw Annie stirring the pot with a clear lipstick tube. Next to it was streaked with something dark red. I asked Annie what she was doing, and she stammered out that she was just helping me by stirring the spaghetti. I didn't buy it for a second, and I grabbed the lipstick tube from the counter. I sniffed it, and I gagged from the smell. It was period blood, and my goodness, did it smell absolutely putrid. I thought that I was going to throw up. I asked Annie as calmly as possible if she had put blood inside the spaghetti, and she refused to speak until I called both Josh and Michelle to come down to the kitchen. Annie broke down and admitted that she was mad that I didn't make Claire give up half of her Blizzard. So she decided to get back at us by putting period blood in the food. Once my niece fessed up, I yelled at her and said that she could have made us all sick, and that it was ridiculous and cruel overreaction over something so minor. Michelle interrupted me, telling me not to yell at her daughter and that Annie just made a mistake due to stress of their current situation, and the hormones from her period were messing with her brain. I said that I didn't care what caused her to do it, and that I would never think of tampering with someone's food like that if they said that I couldn't have something of theirs, even if I was going through what Annie is. At that point, my husband intervened and said that if Michelle was going to go excuse Annie's behavior and not punish her in any ways, then both of them would have to go to my mother-in-law and father-in-law's house. Michelle tried to protest, but my husband shut that down by asking if she was going to punish my niece for what she did. Michelle said no, so my husband told them to pack up their stuff. I didn't say anything because, quite frankly, after what happened, I wanted them gone too. Michelle and Annie packed up all their stuff, then they left the house in an Uber, picking them up from the house. I dumped the spaghetti out, and I ended up just ordering takeout. A few hours later, my mother-in-law, a 66-year-old female, called me to scold me for letting my husband kick Michelle and Annie out and dumping them onto her and father-in-law. Apparently, they were not prepared for guests and had to call over a younger neighbor of theirs to help them clear out a spare bedroom, which had been used as a pseudo-storage space. My mother-in-law said that I should have told my husband to let Michelle and Annie stay the night and call them to let my mother-in-law and father-in-law know that they had to take Michelle and Annie in and then to kick out the two. Josh heard what his mother was talking about and took the phone from me. He told his mom that she would have done the exact same thing as him if his grandparents had tried to pull that while living with them. My husband then hung up on his mom and told me not to worry about it. I'm relieved that Michelle and Annie are out of the house, but I feel guilty that I let my husband push them into my in-laws instead of doing what my mother-in-law suggested. Am I the jerk? Alright folks, what do you think?
I don't think Opie's the jerk here. I do think someone should have given mother-in-law and father-in-law a heads up if that's where they were going. But that was also incumbent upon sister-in-law when she was kicked out of the house to notify them and ask permission to stay there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit of tricky in that respect. I think that they should have given the mother-in-law and father-in-law a heads up. I really do think that that courtesy should have been extended to them. Also, getting the neighbor to help out. Why didn't Michelle help out with that and Annie help out with that, right? They are capable of lifting stuff and moving stuff out of the storage room, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't really think OP did anything wrong. I mean, she just didn't stop her husband. And I don't think the husband really did anything wrong either. Like, again, he could have given the parents a heads up that they were coming, but I don't know if it really was his responsibility. And yeah, I can understand why he wouldn't want them under his roof anymore after they had tried tampering with their food in that way.
So, and another important thing I think to bring up is Annie did something pretty terrible, right? And what's to say that she wouldn't have done something else now that they were kicking them out of the house, right?
Right, that was my thought, is like, if this was just normal type of things, then maybe you let them stay the night. But where she had gone to this level of sabotage, there's no telling what she would do in their last night there.
So I really don't have any sympathy for Michelle and Annie. I feel bad for the mother-in-law and father-in-law here because like they should have been warned that they were coming. But I also can't blame OP's husband for doing this because at that point in time, who knows what they were capable of doing. I mean, if you're capable of pouring period blood into someone's food, then what else are you capable of doing, right?
Well, and the fact that Michelle didn't do anything was just like, oh, she's just stressed. Like, no, that's not normal stressed behavior.
Yeah.
Like, it was her job to nip this in the bud and or come up with some kind of consequence for it, and she didn't do that.
Well, even if she had just let OP scold Annie, right? And that's really where the communication broke down, is like she did something that was clearly out of line, and then her mother steps in and is like, you can't punish my daughter or scold my daughter. It's like, well, you clearly aren't going to do that either. And at that point in time, what's the point? But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. And Superflex says, not the jerk. Your niece was going to try and poison / make the whole household sick because she didn't get ice cream, and her mother wants to let it slide. 15 years old is more than old enough to know the difference between right and wrong, and is bordering on the age where mistakes like this face serious consequences. Your sister-in-law is not doing your niece any favors with her poor parenting. And OP replies, one of the worst parts about this is that we had a party-sized container of cookies and ice cream that was for everyone in the house. So there was even ice cream that she could have had.
Right, it just wasn't the specific one that her cousin had.
I mean, this is ridiculous at that point in time. Like, she could have had cookies, she could have had ice cream, she could have had her sweet treat, but instead, she chose to sabotage everyone. Alright folks, and our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Not Paying Back the Neighbor's Daughter's Money That My Kids Spent, and letting them read her diary? We just bought a property that had been abandoned. We visited the place a few times before we had it totally renovated to get an idea of what we wanted done and to talk about it with our contractor. During those visits, we brought our kids, and they would explore while we were looking at things. While they were exploring, they found a hidden stash of treasure. We assumed that it must have been left by the previous owner's kid. It had little knickknacks and toys that a kid might collect. There was also a diary that was clearly written in by a child, as well as some cash, around $370 with some change. My wife decided to let them keep the treasure that they had found, and they were excited about it. It's not like we had any chance of returning it to the owner since this house hadn't been lived in for over a decade, and whoever lived there previously was long gone. We weren't around much during the house's renovation. They're done now though, so we've started to move in. We have a distant neighbor that lives on the other side of the wooded area behind our property that came to visit us. He asked us if anyone had found the stash. Apparently his daughter used to sneak into the house, and she was the one that hid the treasure there. I did tell him that my kids had found it several months ago, and I think that they threw a lot of it away or had gotten rid of it by now. But I told him that I would check. True enough, my kids didn't have much of the treasure anymore, or didn't know where it was. My daughter still had the diary because it was fancy and she liked it, and it still had a lot of empty pages. I was able to get her to agree to give it back as long as she could rip out her pages first. My wife did rip them out very carefully, but there weren't as many pages left anymore because our daughter had used up a lot of them. There were still some of the original pages that the neighbor girl had written, so I thought as well I might offer it back. It was not well received though, because it was fairly clear that my daughter had read the pages as she had left comments about things, which makes things awkward since there was stuff about the neighbor's girl's crushes. The neighbor's wife was all up in arms because we let our daughter read her daughter's diary and write comments in it. My wife had skimmed through the thing when we first found it, and there was nothing too scandalous in there for kids to read, so we didn't see a problem with it. The neighbor said that it was obvious that it was a problem since we had ripped out the daughter's pages so she could keep her entries private. I do think that it's a little different though, because we had originally thought that it was an old diary of someone long gone, and people read old diaries all the time. The money was another issue because it was apparently the money that the neighbor's daughter had been saving up from birthdays and Christmases and chores for years, so they wanted us to pay it back. Our kids have spent all of the money already. Honestly, I don't feel like we should have to pay them back the money. It isn't an insignificant amount of money, and we bought the house and everything inside of it became ours. I also feel like they shouldn't have let their daughter hang out in an abandoned house. Alright folks, what do you think?
This one's a little tricky for me, so I'm going to address it in pieces. So I think for the diary and the trinkets, OP is not the jerk. Like, it seems like there wasn't a name in there to identify the child, and like, if you have nothing to go on, it's just an old diary.
Mm-hmm.
And then letting the daughter use it, like, as far as they knew, it was an abandoned diary. And the trinkets, they just thought they were abandoned toys. So I think that's fine. It's unfortunate that that's how things played out, but I don't think OP handled that poorly. But the money, I feel like, is a little bit of a different story. Now that they know who the money belonged to, as long as it's not, like, too dire a financial hardship, I feel like the right thing to do would be to give the money back.
Yeah, I mean, if the parents are willing to give their kids just $400 that are laying around, then probably the parents aren't in that much of a financial hardship at this point in time. Although they did just buy a house, right? But it was abandoned, so it might not be something that they spent a huge amount of money on. I think that the right thing to do in the situation is to give the money back. At the very least. I mean, they gave the journal back. They recognized that this was not property that they were actually entitled to. And to say, well, you shouldn't have the daughter shouldn't have hung around in the house. Well, who's to say that they actually knew that their daughter was hanging around in here, right? If you said the house had been abandoned for 10 years, the kid was clearly using it as a clubhouse, right? So people hang out in abandoned houses all the time, right or wrong, but that doesn't mean that they aren't entitled to their property that they've left in them. There is something like squatters' rights to some degree, right?
Well, and the parents may only have known if the daughter came to them and asked them to retrieve it for her. They may not have known beforehand.
So I think it's unfortunate. I think it's an unfortunate misunderstanding. I also question, you have these neighbors who clearly live in like the wooded lot behind the house. The daughter clearly wandered through the woods one day, found this abandoned property, kind of made it into her fort. And I have to ask, are you willing to have the relationship with your neighbor soured over this? You share a property border. And in that respect, maybe the $400 is going to be a little bit of a easier thing to give back, make amends, talk to them. That way you don't have future problems with them. So I think that the diplomatic thing, and probably the smart thing, is to basically give this money back. Now, whether you're legally in the right or not, I don't know. And it could be that if they decide to take you to small claims court, you'll have no choice but to give that money back. And I don't know how that works. There might be finders keepers rules and stuff like that, but those are complicated, and it's probably going to really depend on your jurisdiction. So they may end up suing you. So I don't know. I don't have a good legal advice, and this, of course, I'm not able to give legal advice, but I can say that to save yourself a lot of trouble, it might be just better to give back the money. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. Alright folks, and our next letter is titled, Am I a Jerk for Refusing to Pay for My Ex-Wife's Sister's College? I'm a 30-year-old male, and I was married to my ex-wife Claire, a 28-year-old female, for 4 years until I found out that she had been cheating on me with her ex-boyfriend. Needless to say, the marriage ended, and we got divorced about 8 months ago. During the divorce proceedings, I learned that Claire's younger sister, Cindy, a 20-year-old female, had known about the affair but chose to keep quiet about it to help Claire hide the affair from me and her family. Before all of this, I had promised to pay for Cindy's medical school costs, as myself and my family are wealthy. And despite the divorce, I had decided that I was still going to pay for her education at the time, as I felt that I didn't need to punish Cindy for what her sister had done. However, as I said before, it was during divorce proceedings that I found out what Cindy did, and once I found out that Cindy was complicit in hiding Claire's infidelity, I felt betrayed and decided to revoke my offer. I told Cindy 8 months back that she should take out a loan or find some other funding, and I won't fund her anymore. I had already paid for 1 semester. Recently, when I received an email from the college regarding the upcoming semester fees, I responded by informing them that they should direct any further inquiries to Cindy, as I would no longer be funding her education. Cindy called me screaming and crying and accusing me of being cruel and heartless for cutting her off. She says that her family couldn't afford the tuition without my support and that she would have to take out a loan. I told her that she's not my concern anymore, and I blocked her. When her father contacted me, he was more calm and asked if there was any possibility of reversing my decision. I stood firm and said that I had no intention of continuing to support Cindy financially. He said that he understands and will try to make Cindy understand too. For context, he was very good to me during my marriage and offered me support when I told him that I was going to divorce Claire. This decision has caused a rift amongst my friends and family. While most of them support my decision, some have criticized me for not honoring my previous promise to Cindy. Even my own mother is urging me to reconsider, citing my past promise and the fact that paying Cindy's education wouldn't be a financial issue for me. However, my father stands by me, agreeing with my decision. Truthfully, I have the means to pay for Cindy's entire medical school education without difficulty, but I can't shake the feeling of betrayal caused by Claire's cheating and Cindy's complicity. But I feel conflicted, so am I the jerk? Alright folks, what do you think?
No, not the jerk. This is a classic case of don't bite the hand that feeds you. You know, I understand OP made a promise, but that was kind of contingent upon her actually being a decent person to him.
Well, yeah, I think that this is one of those situations where if she had stolen money from him or she had done something else to betray him, then he would also be well within his right to not pay her more money, right? And the fact is that she knew about the cheating and she didn't say anything, and it sounds like she even went out of her way to hide the fact that she was cheating. It would be one thing to know about it and say, look, sis, you need to stop this and come forward and whatnot. It's another thing entirely to be like, I'm going to actively hide this and, hide the affair and cheating.
It's very clear that she only saw OP for money and still only sees him as a means to finance her career.
Yeah. As for OP's mother, they're wealthy. She's welcome to put money down if she really wants to, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping her from funding Cindy's education if this is this important to her. And if she does, then, I mean, that's more power to her, but she can also have agency. She can also have other things that she can do. But let me know what you folks think. So anyhow, take care and good luck. All right, folks, it is tea time. Grab your beverages of choice. I've got some tea right here. Amber has a joke, and I have to make a confession about my tea. I don't have any more licorice spice, apparently. So I'm out. And so I actually today won't make you guess, but I will say that I have the apple cinnamon tea again, so.
Where did the zombie bookstore keep the anatomy books?
Well, I would say that I kept the anatomy books where you keep, like, nonfiction, right?
In the cooking section.
Oh, wow. That's dark. And I, as I said, have apple cinnamon tea.
Don't worry, we'll get lighter jokes tomorrow. That's probably the darkest one in the book.
That's almost as dark as the period blood one. Well timed, Amber. Did you pick that one out on purpose?
No.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Happy Wednesday, Hump Day, Friday, Junior's Eve. Amber, we need some kind of moral advice and or guidance. And please, have it on treasure hunting.
If you find something and later find out that it belongs to someone else, the proper thing to do is to return it to them.
Yeah. Unless it's the ghost of a pirate who's trying to haunt you. Then maybe get rid of the treasure and then run and hide. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye.
Delusional Sparrow. That's a great band name.